Well, we seem to have had a fun conversation in the last video, wherein we discussed the Detroit Red Wings and the idea of Steve Yzerman, quote-unquote, over-ripening his prospects. This got a lot of conversation in the comment section below, and I was very pleased to see that there was some good engagement on that topic. So, continuing with our trend of talking about Steve Yzerman and the Wings, I wanted to refer to a different article in this video that goes over a little bit of a, let's just say, tangy twist as to the entire Red Wings conversation, because in the last video, we had discussed all the moves that Yzerman had done. Or not even really done, but just kind of the way he has developed prospects as the GM at the Wings, and what this means, what conclusions we can make about the Wings and their process. Well, let's shift from talking about what the Red Wings have done to what the Red Wings will do. Courtesy of our friends at BleacherReport.com, because they had themselves an article published earlier, when was this? 2 days ago? Joe Yzerman went out there and posted this on the website. Buy or sell. Every NHL lottery team improving in 2024-2025. Yeah, the title of the article doesn't really make the most sense, but essentially what this piece does is it analyzes each of the lottery teams in the NHL, and it gives a verdict as to what their directions should be based off of the writer Joe Yzerman's opinion on things. Now, of course, this is just the thoughts and writing of one guy, so one guy isn't representative of what the entire Detroit Red Wings organization is going to do. It's not representative of what Steve Yzerman is going to do. This is just a conversation that I thought was fun to go out there and discuss. Because for Joe Yzerman and this article on Bleacher Report, which will be linked in the description, he does go out there and analyze each of the lottery teams and gives a pretty reasonable explanation for each of them as to what their paths could be. And because I'm a Detroit Red Wings fan, I wanted to go out there and talk about the Wings in this conversation. Let's go out there and read. It's difficult to understand where Detroit GM Steve Yzerman is coming from. In their efforts to get back in the playoffs for the first time since 2016, the Red Wings have come up short the past 2 years, but the adjustment this summer is curious. Re-signing Patrick Kane was a good idea, and signing Vladimir Tarasenko gives them the depth lost after Perron signed in Ottawa. But trading Jake Walman to San Jose to free up money was a curious decision, right? They had signed Cam Talbot to help out in goal, which helps after James Reimer signed with Buffalo, and Erik Gustafsson will help replace Walman on defense. They still need to get long-term deals done with RFA, Seider, and Raymond, but those are the no-brainer moves to be made. Still, the goal is to get over the hump and back into the playoffs. It's tough to tell if this team is any better or worse than it was. Verdict: selling. So the article goes out there and says pretty much that in the writer's opinion here, the Detroit Red Wings will be a selling team in the 2025, let's just say, trade deadline period. Yeah. Now, the article at the beginning goes out there and explains that, hey, because there are X amount of teams in each division, and because it is a divisional format, and because we had these amount of teams that were in the lottery, it's easy to kind of come up with your conclusions based off of who's good and who's bad and what the season is going to play out like. So even though this particular analysis for the Detroit Red Wings doesn't directly say, oh yeah, I think they are going to be good, or I think they are going to be bad, it just kind of brings up how, in the writer's perspective, there isn't really too much of a cohesive idea with what Steve Yzerman has done so far. Some of the moves they have made, they improved the team, for sure. Re-signing Patrick Kane? Fantastic. Grabbing Tarasenko? Fantastic. Signing Cam Talbot? Fantastic. But that Jake Walman trade is so weird, bizarre, and out of nowhere that it becomes very difficult to understand the vision when you isolate that move and compare it to everything else, you know? Like, oh, it could have been seen as a cap-saving move, but as we have discussed, there are a bunch of other ways that the Detroit Red Wings could have freed up money. Heck, even the Jake Walman contract in particular, if they had just waived the guy, he probably would have gotten claimed by San Jose anyway, and the Wings would not have had to send some capital away to get Walman off of their hands. It's so bizarre how that particular trade went down, and I feel like that is the move that's really making things difficult for people to understand where the Wings are and what their process is. Not only that, but also understand if the Wings actually got better. Because Erik Gustafsson sorry to break it to you, but I don't think he's going to be the Jake Walman replacement per se. I'd say that for Walman, his minutes more likely coincides with the role that Simon Edvinsson will likely develop into, whether that is this year or sometime in the future. But for Erik Gustafsson, I'd say that his production and his offensive ice time is probably going to mirror what Shane Gostisbehere had, considering the offensive role that each of those players can provide. It's been very well documented over the years they can do that. But the question still remains, are the Wings good enough to force themselves into not really like buying territory? The article here says that they're going to sell at the deadline, which is going to be interesting because I don't know if the Red Wings and Stevie Y actually have what it takes to sell off some of their current assets, but the question is, will they be competitive enough? Will they be good enough to actually make an impact so that they don't need to sell anybody off at the trade deadline, where they can keep guys like Patty Kane and Tarasenko and be like, yeah, like we are right in the mix here. We are smack dab in this playoff race, and it's not going to be a cakewalk for any of these teams around us to make the playoffs because we are going to be there. Like, we are going to insert our names into the conversation and contend. They were super close in contending this previous season. It literally came down to the last period, pretty much, of the year. But then again, you have to acknowledge that the Atlantic Division was very, very bad. So there certainly will be some bouncing back from a lot of these teams heading into 2024, 2025. I don't think anybody is expecting any one particular division to be as bad as the Atlantic was this previous year. I mean, even if you compare just the bottom half teams in the East, they were all pretty trash. So the Detroit Red Wings, honestly, I get it. It's like if they had made the playoffs, they wouldn't have been too great anyway. But just knowing where they were in their rebuild and their progress that they had made, seeing how close they got, it does give Red Wings fans hope, I would say. But it also kind of puts them in a tough spot because they did make these moves to improve the team, but not all of them actually improved the team. Jake Walman trade, sure, it improved the salary structure if you wanted to say that, but then again, you lost out on a player that a lot of Wings fans are like, yeah, he's actually like, okay, why did they trade him away? So I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as to whether or not the Wings will be quote-unquote sellers at the trade deadline next year. It's a crazy idea out of nowhere, but it fits with the theme of the article on Bleacher Report. It just kind of goes out there and concludes seller, buyer, or staying put on all of these teams around the NHL that were lottery teams last year. So I'll leave a link in the description if you want to go ahead and read the rest of the piece yourself. You want to see some of the analyses done on the other 13 teams, but for the Wings in particular, the writer here isn't really too optimistic as to how they're going to fare, and I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Do you agree or disagree? Obviously, it would be in every Red Wings fan's best interest to be like, yeah, no, they're going to go 82-0-0, they're going to win the Stanley Cup in 16 games, Seider's going to get 100 points, Raymond's going to get 150, and then everybody's going to get paid, right? Like, it's fine to speculate like that, but of course, that's not going to happen. So, realistically, where do you think the Wings finish in the 24-25 season? How well do you think that translates into their trade deadline plans? And what are your thoughts on them potentially selling off some of their guys? Bonus question, if that happens, who goes? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.